Do you know, right now, some amazing things are happening to our bonsais. In particular, there's 3 particular alerts or triggers which you should be looking for right now in those incredible leaves. And I'm sure if you looked at your bonsai right now, you would see an absolutely incredible sea of colours from your maples, from your elms, in fact from all your deciduous stuff. Well, we're going to be talking about why those colours exist. And trust me, today I'm not going to refer to it as bonsai juice, which is my easy way of talking about scientific stuff. We're also going to be looking at the sort of autumnal pruning we can do right now because of what we're seeing in the leaves. And finally, cheers Gary, I'm going to be talking about this Jadam juice, which is a particular Korean farming natural method. You want to hear what I do with this and why? You know the answer. I'll see you in a minute. Hiya, it's Xavier. Welcome to my bonsai retreat. And look, I hate it saying, the top 3, but you know what? There really are 3 things that if you follow through on this, you're going to learn some great stuff about your leaves. You're going to learn why now it's a time you should be looking hard to discover, can I start pruning this now, or do I need to wait for another couple of weeks? In fact, let's just take a run through my bench right now to understand that diverse nature or range of colours we're seeing right now in the leaves. And it's important that we understand why our leaves are showing this, because it's telling us messages. If you look now, we've got this maple, look, it's got gorgeous colours, and we've got this range of reds and all sorts of hues like that. Well, in a minute I'm going to tell you why we're getting those reds and different colours. Beside it, this Chinese elm, it's just yellowing, and a lot of people say that Chinese elm don't drop their leaves. Unless they're inside, of course, in which case they drop everything. But no, a lot of my elms will keep their leaves through the winter and I keep them outside. But some of them do show their deciduous nature and will drop their leaves. Well, guess what? Don't worry. Then if we move over from that elm, well, look, we've got the larch. It's at the moment got a mixture of vibrant green needles to the browned off tips at the end, which I tell you right now is actually primarily down to the wind. Loads of wind here in Grantham, as you well know, but it's also starting to show that sign of the tree preparing for the onset of winter. More of that in a minute. And then we're looking past the larch to the incredible vibrant green of the oak. Right now this little marmay oak is looking fantastic, and though we've got a few little yellowish sort of small leaves, the rest are still firmly hanging on. And you know what? The first thing I'll say to you, if those leaves are sitting on the tree, whether they're green or in a transitionary colour, if they don't fall off easily, i.e. you need to do anything more than pressure, leave them, because right now those leaves are still providing an important function, and that function is still gaining energy in the chlorophyll. The green that you see, that deep green, is indeed the colour of the chlorophyll. While that's on there, it's still pulling energy in, and right through this next month to 5 weeks, these trees are going to be gaining that energy, ready to store them up for that harsh winter when it gets sometimes below freezing. I know some of you in America are going, Zav, how can you stand such cold temperatures? Well, you're like 9 feet deep in snow. But seriously, what we're actually looking for right now is that alert, that signal that says these shears can come out and do some work. Because really, we're in that funny period right now where we want to get out and get pruning, but we have to wait. At the moment, as I've just said, those leaves are still doing a function. They're still pulling in energy to help build roots, to build tissue, and as I say, to get the tree ready for a great spring 2026. So what are those colours? What are they telling us? Now right now we're looking at this, again, another beautiful maple which I've had for a while, and you can see the leaves, they're going a sort of yellow and orangey. And those pigments are always there. In fact, they're normally masked and covered by the bright green chlorophyll. But those yellows and orange pigments, they're called caretonoids. But this is really our first signal to show that the tree is starting the process of going into winter dormancy. I mean, in essence, what we're seeing here is it reclaims the chlorophyll in. It's also reclaiming all those nutrients that are still in that leaf mass, which you can store and use at a better and more appropriate time. What we're seeing here is the tree's response to shortening daylight hours, and also, as I well know, the lowering temperatures. But does that mean I can do anything right now? Well, if we have a look, although we've got browned off leaves, and as I say, on this one that's definitely a sign of the wind burn, we've still got, there's the yellows I can see in there. Further in we've got some greens, but if you give it a bit of a shake, they're hanging on. And I think probably in another 3 to 4 weeks I may well be able to do some pruning work on this. Unlike one other I'm going to show you where we are going to do some pruning work. Now there is another sort of alert or signal that we'll be looking for, and that's when the temperatures continue to drop but are still above freezing, and we see the leaves suddenly go a really deep red, and that red isn't actually part of the leaf normally. It's not hidden by the chlorophyll. And in fact, as you can see now, the next stage which you're seeing with this red oak is when you get that really deep red colour, and that's not normally part of the pigment of the leaf. That's created as a result of the lowering temperatures, but they're still above freezing, and indeed an excess of sugars in the leaf. And this is a sure sign, this is probably your final sign of the preparation for the winter dormancy. Actually, let's have a little look, because right next door to it is this wonderful ginkgo, and you can see the leaves are just ready to drop, and literally if you touch them they will just flutter down to the ground. And again, when you see those signs, now great, get in there, start pruning for the buds that you want in 2026. And in fact, if you notice beside it's this lovely trident maple, which is again still in that early stages. We've still got those yellow and oranges, but it's not yet showing us the sign that those leaves are ready to drop. In fact, the only thing that's showing really nice and green right now is this yew planting, which I did a good few years ago, and it's taken a while. Now obviously your evergreens, they stay green. If they don't stay green, there's another key alert. There's something going wrong with your tree. It's either in the roots or indeed it'll have some sort of infection. Thankfully, this yew, although it's got a long way to go, is looking lovely and green. But that's not getting us back to our pruning, is it? Now what you've clearly seen in my garden is that you've got trees in various different stages of that preparation for winter. So actually, autumn or fall if you're in America can be a great time, because literally if you stagger yourself right through that period, you're going to find, like this Linden small leaf lime, that the leaves will literally, and you can just carefully pull them back off their stalk, but they're already falling. This is now a great time to be doing some pruning. And the pruning I'm talking about right now is the autumnal prune, and this is the one where I set it up for that big flush that I want in the right places next May, believe it or not. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean by that in a minute. So clearly that's the first thing that we need to be looking at, the first bonsai alert. We're looking for the colour or leaf change to be apparent. We're looking for the leaves to basically be in that state where we can actually take them off without causing any harm at all or damage to that very juvenile bud for the following year. And certainly on my lindens I can go in there and do some pruning. After I've done that pruning, I think we ought to have a bit of a drink from this very natural organic Korean method using something called Jadam Sulphur. In fact, I think no, we'll talk about that in a few minutes time, which is probably the same time you're going to find out exactly what I've got in this container. By the way, this is all courtesy of Gary Brown. You know, I visited him probably about a month ago. Fantastic thing for a Lord of the Rings inspired plantation, but he gave me a load of organic stuff that he prepared as a result of the, I think it's the Korean natural farming method, all very organic, but you'll hear more about that once we've done all the pruning and finished and got the leaves off this. So before we move on to the second key alert or indicator we need to be looking at amongst our bonsai, I have actually got another linden, which I notice has got wire on it. Best get that off. This too, funny enough, has actually got some green leaves on there. So this is one of the cases where, although this lot can come off, I can prune that half, but I could also wait until they green off. But you're going to also see that parts of the tree will be in different stages, depending on how many trees you've got. Depends. I may actually do some of the pruning, keep that near me and prune that back in another couple of weeks' time. Now the second thing that's the key indicator that you need to be looking at right now, and it relates to the fact that we've got lowering temperatures right now in Grantham in the UK. We're starting to see our day temperatures around about that sort of 12-13 degrees Celsius, but overnight they're dropping down to sort of 8 or 9, probably a little bit lower. We actually had our first frost the other day on the car, and that's a massive warning sign, because if you start looking at the leaves of your tropicals, your ficus, your jades, or your crassula, or indeed actually even your pomegranates. Do you remember right at the beginning of the year I showed that video about seed to bonsai? Well, look at that pomegranate now. 5 of them looking like that. These are going to be really nice to look at in 2026, which is a great segue to say, if you want to see how that development's going, and indeed if you want to see how things are going in the growing beds, because we're going to have the year 2 update next spring, then now is a great time to subscribe, hit bell notifications, all that sort of stuff, because I tell you what, there has been some incredible developments in the growing beds. Many of you will know why that is, but you know what, it's the best move I ever made. But to find out why, you need to be here next spring. So yeah, we've got to start looking at these indoor or less cold hardy species that we have most of the year. Now the ficus have actually already gone indoors, because as soon as the temperatures dip below 13°C for me, that's my trigger to take them inside. And if you look at the leaves, you'll start to see them yellowing off, and in fact you can see now I've got them inside set up. They're very roughly set up on the table, and in fact if you have a look there, there's a lemon, and if you look at the leaves on that lemon, you can really see how the cold has started to have a detrimental effect on it. So again, you're looking at your leaves for signs that this indoor or this less cold hardy species needs to come indoors. And in fact, if you look at my setup here, I finally managed to adopt an indoor lighting setup, which actually we'll have a look at right now. And then of course, once you've seen how the tree's set up, and this will have a lot more of the jades and the Buddhist pine, they'll come in as well as probably the other crassula. But what I found last year worked really well is burning my fingers on a hot light bulb. Now is Adam of Notion Bonsai recommended to me these Sansi growing plant lights, and I'm sure you saw it in a couple of my videos last year. But I've been using this now, and I was so very impressed and pleased with the results. Just a shame I don't know how to screw things. There we go, let's screw that right in. Should be easy, shouldn't it? Oh, come on. You entertain yourself while I'm doing this. It's just a simple screw. What are you... What's changed? Now go on then. The sharp-minded amongst you will notice a clear and obvious difference. Yeah, I sat there trying to screw one of these into a bayonet bulb. Now believe it or not, I did have this here last year, but I've just remembered what this small dim-witted brain had forgotten. I actually had it set up on a lamp. Now obviously if you actually do it properly and know what the screw's for, you set up your filming lamp, which I remember I did now, and that you can screw in, and this will, or should, give me the grow light that I want. Get ready for bright lights. And obviously it's not ideal because it's going horizontally, but I can change the angle slightly, and what I do is every day I just switch which way it's pointing, so the leaves get rotated and get a chance to get light there. But that grow light made an absolutely massive difference to how these came out this spring. Instead of having to spend 5 weeks recovering until May sometime, they came out running, and I've seen the difference in the growth and the general vigour and health, certainly of the ficus. So if you haven't got yourself a grow light, then certainly I've tried this one with Sansi and it worked absolutely thumbs up. Well, hopefully at some point in the near future I'm going to work out why a screw fitting doesn't go into a bayonet fitting. And in terms of, actually, if anyone's interested, the actual costs I didn't notice any particular difference in my power bill as a result of running that, and I run it every day for 3 or 4 months, so I didn't notice any particular difference. So definitely a good investment. So what are these here for? Well, it still links to this second key alert, because I take loads of cuttings, and if you do too, make sure you have a wander around your growing beds or wherever you put your cuttings, because right here I've got 2 Buddhist pine, I think podocarpus cuttings, which are good 4 or 5 years old now, and I've discovered that although some people can get away with having them in their garden over winter, these definitely, the leaves start to brown off, and already even on these ones I can see the signs of that first frost. Unexpected it was, but the effect it had on it, because I've learned through hard experience that these do not enjoy being outside. So I've got to go around, make sure I get things like this inside, probably leave them for a little bit longer. I'll wait until the temperatures get nearer that sort of 5 degrees overnight. Olives. That's an interesting one. I've had the olives outdoors for many years, and I think the thing I noticed is that they go fully dormant. They don't look particularly happy, but they certainly don't die off. And I've never had any experience of my olives dying off because I've left them outside. And as I say, we're a zone 9B, so our temperatures don't really go much below -4 or 5 for any consistent period more than about 3 or 4 days at different periods through the winter. But I have noticed that the olives, especially if they're in smaller pots, the Mame ones, well, they don't mind being tucked up with a hot water bottle and a hot steaming cup of cocoa. No, these, I'll bring these indoors as well under the grow lights. I know I can leave them outside, but actually I like what happens when they're brought inside. The bigger other olives that you've got, do you know what? They can't come inside, so they just stay in a sheltered part of the garden, somewhere near a fence, off concrete, preferably on grass or on some sort of insulated area. But yeah, have a little look. Now's probably a good time, while you've still got a few weeks, to just double check the cold hardiness of some of the trees you've got. And remember, if they're in little weeny pots like this, any temperatures that you see, probably give yourself a bit more leeway, because there's not a lot of room in there for that soil, not a lot of insulation to those roots. So that's the second key point, but there is a third one as well, and that is vital. And this third key trigger or alert you need to be looking at, and this will apply to all your trees, but I would suggest your deciduous definitely, is if you've got some of the like species. And you know me, I've got loads of Chinese elm, but I've got 2 what I'd call premium sort of finished bonsai, and these were my legacy trees for memory of my departed wife Zita, and I'm very careful with them. Both this one and the one you're seeing now, which has got obvious differences to it, were repotted the same time, I think 2 years ago, and you can clearly see that one has got loads and loads of healthy growth on it. It's going to be pruned, and then this one, it's got a few shoots that are coming out. We've got healthy buds, but it's not performed anywhere near the same way. So they were both repotted at the same time, both in the same soil, both from the same source supplier. In fact, they've all been treated the same. And I think the only difference is perhaps the depth of the pot and the relative room the roots have in that pot. I would be expecting my Chinese elms to give the similar sort of growth patterns, and that first one, normally prune it twice a year, and that has been pruned once already. This one has not been pruned at all this year, and for me that's a key trigger. It's an alert. You need to be looking at your trees. If you're seeing an abnormally low growth and the tree itself has not had any obvious signs of sickness, or hasn't been recently repotted that year, then you do need to ask yourself a question, and the question is why? I have no reason to think that this is sick. I've seen no signs of any sort of infestations or bugs, or even those white scale, and the scale insects on these is normally pretty bad, which is suggesting to me, I think that I might, after it's had a prune back, need to look at putting that into a perhaps just a little bit of a deeper pot. I want to have a look at the roots. I want to make sure there isn't some other reason why we had no growth this year. And I suppose the only question is, could I do it now or should I wait till spring? And in this instance, if I had a slightly bigger pot, I could do a slip pot where I don't muck about with the roots and just surround it with an macadamia mix or something like that. But I'm happy that I will observe it. I will prune back some of the branches, and this will be repotted in the late winter of 2026. In fact, if you're really interested in seeing the pruning of this, the shaggy one, and indeed a couple of other of my Chinese elms that I've got down the bottom of the garden, then actually we'll leave that for the next video, shall we? I know a few of you are still saying, Zav, didn't you say you were going to talk to me about what was in this lovely bottle and whether or not I was going to be using it for this or indeed for that? But before we can really talk more about this, we need to get that small leaf lime stroke linden ready. And finally, a bit of bonsai here, you say, because yep, this is what we're going to be pruning. As you know, this has shown all the characteristics that I talked about in the first key indicator, i.e. those leaves have all browned off and are able to be removed, i.e. not just by shaking them like those ones. You can carefully peeling backwards from the direction the new bud is coming out, just remove them. So I'm going to continue to remove all these, and then I'll come back and very quickly show you exactly how I prune for maximum advantage 2026. Now it's probably worth pointing out, and I know there's probably a lot of you saying, Zav, why don't you do this in spring, because that's a great time as well. And do you know what, for most of you deciduous, that's probably quite true. And if I only had 10, 20, 30 trees, I'd be doing it in spring along with my repots, along with most of my stuff. Being able to do a load of pruning and bud selection now across the range of my deciduous means those few that I do next year will get just as much attention. You know what, with 700 trees, I still don't get to a lot of them. But there is some advantages, and certainly it's something that for those of you who follow Ryan Neal of Bonsai Mirai will know he talks about it a lot, and it's this period where the tree is redistributing its energy, setting up the growing buds and the growing tips for next year, and putting in place all the mechanisms and chemical stuff needed so that it gets the right start. He'll talk about a very, very key critical period of about 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks, where at that leaf drop point you can actually do some pruning, and that means the tree won't waste energy on setting up this big growing tip at the end as the one where everything goes, but you can actually tell the tree, I want you to set up some lower buds. But certainly from the results I've had in the retreat over the last sort of 6 years, all I've seen is benefits. So I'm going to continue to do that process, and hopefully a few of you will too. Now this tree, for those of you again who've been on my channel a while, will know that actually it's been here since the beginning, and it's been through the wars. It was actually a dig tree that I dug up in 2018, I think, and it's transplanted well, and you know, it's starting to develop a nice structure. But right here, in fact, you can see that the healing that's gone on there this is exactly what we're looking to try and achieve. We've almost got a full circle, and in fact I probably just need to, in 2026, take off that bottom section to help it roll over more. So the basic structure of the tree is really here. I know, there's a lot of you saying, Zav, those roots are absolutely appalling. But there's something about it I quite like. So it's staying. So knowing I'm not going to get another flush, what I'm looking to do right now is clean up my nubs, like that. And then we look, and if you look at this bud setup, here we've got a bud there, which is ideal for the little pattern that we want for the ramification. Again here we've got 2 buds. They're all going in the same direction though, so I'm going to have 2 shoots coming straight at me. So I'm going to remove that one straight away, so only one comes out. And in fact, if you look here, this is probably the perfect example. We've got a bud there a bud there, there, there and there. And the way I like to do this is the actual buds that I want for next year are these little two here. Now the branch is actually horizontal, so I can definitely remove those. And you're asking me, why have I kept this third one? Well, the reason, from what I've observed, is that next spring, when this tree, right now, it's now going to spend all its time setting up all its reserves and energy so that this will be the primary bud that's going to do all the growing. So I imagine that's going to involve setting that where the oxen's going to be as the primary bud. And next spring, when this opens up, it's going to send out a lovely long flush of growth. Well, that's great for vigor and health, but we all know what that gives us. That gives us absolutely massive long, gosh, the sun's doing it to my face again. It gives us massive long internodes, and for a bonsai, we definitely don't want that place in the tree. So what's going to happen is that in spring, that one will be allowed to flush out. I won't touch it, and I'll wait till we get to May when we get our post-flush hardened pruning, and then I'll cut that long extension right off, leaving these two microbuds. Now probably find the second one will have also flushed out, but then what we're going to get in the May is the buds that I actually want, and we're going to get much shorter internode growth. They'll be slightly weaker because all the energy that's been stored up over this winter period is going to be spent on that. I do the same thing with my trident maples. I know there's a particular video on it, and I do the same thing with my maple. So I'm going to go around there and I'm going to basically cut this all the way back to those three buds, knowing it's the two that I want behind. Now there are definitely times when that principle doesn't apply, and as you go around your tree you'll see why. And here in particular, if I know the front's here, I've got this growth coming out this way. If I allow all three, or certainly these two, to come out, they're going to come right across the front of the tree. Well, I don't want that. If looking close, there's that little bud there, which is a much sharper angle and away, and actually will take it away from the front. So again, I'm actually not going to take the third one. I'm going to let this second one be the primary bud, and yes, that'll grow across the front, but then I'll cut back to here in May. Okay, and that just leaves me the apex. And in fact, there's a bud there as well, and there's a micro bud lower down. Because it's right at the apex, I don't want vigor up there anyway. So I'm actually going to remove some of those anyway. And that will slow that one right down and hopefully allow me to get some new buds coming up a lot closer in. So that one's all done now. There's one more thing to do, and it all relates to Gary's bottle. And actually, while I'm thinking about it, there's one question that I'm always being asked, and that's why do I wire so much of a branch out, especially if I know that actually what I'm probably going to do is cut it all off. And the answer is actually relatively straightforward. If you let a shoot continue to grow out, its weight will naturally pull it down. As soon as you pull that terminal tip or that terminal bud below a certain level, the tree goes, hang on a minute, this isn't a primary branch I want to be putting energy to. By wiring it upwards, what I'm saying to the tree is continue to put energy, pour your energy into it so that we can get thickness and growth. I want those to keep doing, because what I'm wanting is the thickness here. So that's another reason why I definitely put loads and loads of wire on these things. And the wire's recyclable. So cut that right down, and I'll do a little bit more cutting in that, but it's starting to come on. This is too long on this side, but I'm looking to promote that secondary growth that I want in 2026, and we may well in a later video show me carving this right out, because I need to check whether or not that section there is actually dead right through, whether I can open that up. It's a bit of a hollow. Anyway, come on, let's go and have a look and see what's worth talking about in that bottle, shall we? So I have no doubt that many of you have guessed that this Jadam Sulphur, Jadam, is an agent that I'm going to use as a overwintering spray. I'm going to use that as a means to get rid of and destroy all those bugs and stuff that we don't want coming out in the following year. It's basically a liquidized version of sulphur, but what is particularly nice and good about it is that it's a natural liquid fungicide, and if you add it to the JWA, which is the Jadam wetting agent, which is basically another natural organic liquid soap, then if you do the dilution rates right, then the two together actually work as a really effective natural organic bug spray during the year. But what I'll say is that Gary Brown has kindly given me various different stuff like this to try out, and he makes it all himself. But I've had a look online, and if you have a look on YouTube, probably if you look at Korean natural farming, or indeed if you just put in Jadam Sulphur, then you're going to find there's quite a lot of sites that talk about this. They talk about how you can make it, and certainly I'm going to try this out from now right through next year and just sort of see what sort of results I get. Certainly with the wetting agent, which is the liquid soap. So I've made this up in the desired ratio, and I'm now going to spray it on my bare tree. And this is the key. I'm not going to be spraying it onto foliage or that. It is a sulphur based solution, so it is going to cause some sort of harm to your foliar growth. I do expect that it may well also turn the trunk or the nude branches a slightly paler white colour. That'll all wash off over a week or so. So let's get this stuff sprayed on and see if we can get rid of those overwintering bugs, shall we? So hopefully you've got something out of that. Certainly there's a strong smell of eggs right now, which we expect with sulphur based ingredients. I'll let you know if there's any untoward effects, but again, big thank you to Gary. All that's left to say is that these Chinese elms are going to get tackled next, and if you want to know more about this one, that's the video. Otherwise, happy bonsai and God bless. Cheers.